What's going on, guys? My name is Austin. I am the CEO of Fly Bodies.
Hey, I'm Garrett. I'm an intern at Fly Bodies.
And today we are going to do a couple topics. We're going to jump in. Garrett's got a few good topics. And yeah, we're just going to jump right in because we know you guys are impatient human beings. Everyone is. So we want to know what these topics are. I'm ready to do this.
All right. So I have kind of like one overarching thing, and it's pretty fitting for today. The topic is focus. So when it comes to health and wellness or business, these things are interrelated, and I'm interested, Austin, to hear your thoughts on focus when it comes to fly bodies or your training in the past. So let's jump right into it. What do I mean by focus?
Yeah,
So
let's hear it. I want to
focus
know because
means
I'm now focused on you. So
focus, right? Lock it in.
yeah.
We were chatting
Uh-huh.
a little bit before we started recording. You're talking about prioritization. Like, how do you know
Mm-hmm.
what the right thing to do is on any given day based on what's most important or what's most urgent, what's going to move the needle for the most?
Mm-hmm.
So, how this connects to, I guess I'll start with health and wellness.
Right.
Focus, the term that's probably better used when it comes to focus for health and wellness is specificity. So
Okay.
I have a
Dude, big
NASM.
words
So
today. I like you're getting these big words and I love it. Keep going. Sorry.
the National Academy of Sports Medicine would define specificity as the fitness principle of specificity states that the body's adaptation or change in physical fitness is specific to the type of training undertaken. In other words, individuals only get more skillful at what they do in practice. Okay,
Hmm.
so practice how you play, and then you'll see this in terms of like, you know, linemen will be doing half squats or quarter squats under the bar versus a full range motion because in the game of football they're not really squatting down to full depth, or baseball
Hmm.
players or golf players will do rotational strength exercises because that looks a lot like their swing. And
Hmm.
in my life, in my physical training, I have messed up specificity and focus, and I've also, I think,
Hmm.
gotten it right a few times. So like in the past, I was really just like bought into the idea that all strength is good, right? All strength will help sports performance regardless of the type of strength. And so I did a lot of powerlifting training, which, like 1 rep max, squat, bench, deadlift. And I was doing this
Right.
off season and even during season of sevens rugby, which, Austin, if you, I know you have opinions about like what the best type of training is for sevens rugby, but a
Hmm.
slow 1 rep max powerful lift is not the same thing as what sevens players actually do on the field, right? There's kind of like these repeated sprints, and there's an
Right.
aerobic endurance component. And so I actually realized this after I got some injuries that I was training incorrectly. I was training for the wrong purpose. My specificity was off. And so I actually changed up a
Hmm.
little bit and started to, adhere to some of your advice and some of the other advice of more advanced sevens players to focus on, those explosive movements as well as just like running endurance. So I guess I'm wondering,
Right.
when it comes to health and wellness, how have you seen the principle of focus or specificity play out in your own training, or just like the way that you approach training with clients?
No, it's a great question because I think a lot of times you're trying to find the uh, optimal training plan. We're trying to find the optimal diet. And when it comes to, so focus is basically being able to take time and actually dive to one specific thing for a long period of time. And that, that is a relative term because I mean, I can focus for an hour and a half on writing a blog post, right? And just like dive into that. And why I say that is because I think about focus on a day to day basis, but also focusing on a specific goal. And we talk about specificity when it comes to training for a sport or to get bigger, faster, stronger, or lose weight. There are specific specificity when it comes to training plans and stuff. And so, one thing you have to realize is in the health and wellness game, things take a long time, right?
Mm.
So, if you are trying to basically lose weight, it's going to not be something that you're like, okay, in this month, I found the perfect diet and exercise plan for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Maybe you found you were focusing on a good diet and exercise plan, and it was to your current state so that it was helping you lose weight. Or, like you were talking about, when it comes to training for a sport or something, there are like basically different seasons of the year to where certain programmatic weightlifting and all this stuff, like speed training, all that, all those things are going to help you in different parts of the season. But basically, with wellness, like long term wise, I'll go back to that because that is what we want to focus on. Is you have to do something for a solid like 2 to 3 months just to understand if it's something that's sustainable for you, and then also if it's working for you, right? Because in 1 month you may not see any change, and it's because of different like lifestyle factors that were happening, and you just didn't optimize what you were trying to focus on. But then maybe the next 2 3 months you're like, oh man, I through this barrier actually seeing really good results. So like focusing, and I got this information, or I got some advice when I was into college from a friend of mine's mom. And because there was an example, I love, okay, I'll give you an example. There was a guy named Thomas who was like an animal, absolute beast on the field. Like you kind of afraid to talk to him sometimes because he was just a savage. All right. And so everybody wanted to be like Tom Tom, right? Everybody wanted, because the dude was just like, he played like his life was on the line when he was out on the field, and we loved seeing it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because he did different types of workouts than what the North did, right? And so if you wanted to play like Tom Tom, if you wanted to be like Tom Tom, you wanted to, like, I was like, man, I want to do his workouts because he's a freak of nature and he just wants to eat babies. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, he's
but
like,
that's what, like,
you want to emulate the people that you see. I mean, that's like what I recognize
exactly.
as like you are a high performing sevens player. So I'm like, hey, I want to like, how did you get to that point, right? So like, how did you like, what was Tom Tom doing that was different than the normal people? Like, what made it his thing special?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, he was doing like isometric type things, like very different, like kind of weird things that were like looked interesting. Like, oh, this is why he's such an animal, because he does these weird things. When in reality, he could have probably been doing anything, and it would have been still been a
Mm,
crazy person, right? And so that's where, if I like looking back when we talk specificity, like there is no perfect workout or perfect meal plan for
mm,
somebody. Like it's always, but there is like a more optimal the other thing. So like what I will say is you have to try something for a long period of time. You have to focus on that thing and like really understand why it's working or why it's not working. And then from a specificity point, it's like Tom was doing these crazy workouts and we want to do it. We're probably like doing something that we were not to do. We were doing more than we probably should have been doing. So, like, I don't know if I answered your question completely, just because I think we're always looking for the perfect workout, but it's basically being able to do something and understand why it might be working and why it might not be working, and tweak those
hmm.
things as you go. Unless you're
Yeah.
unless you're doing something like base.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Over focusing or saying, I need to focus on this one specific thing, or like this is the perfect secret silver bullet type workout, that's probably going too far, is kind of the
Mm-hmm.
principle that I'm hearing out of that. And then also I'm hearing, and then this makes a lot of sense, is that the kind of maybe the opposite of specificity would be like general physical preparation, or GPP as it's referred to. and
Hmm.
everyone can benefit from like getting a little bit better in terms of cardio, getting a little bit stronger, you know, a little bit better mobility, all these kind of like core baseline factors that you
Hmm.
might be better off by being in better shape overall and like not being hyper specific depending on the season, depending on, you know,
Totally.
your outcomes. But most people with health and wellness, right, unless you like it or enjoy it, you don't need to do barbell squats, right? There's people who are super dogmatic about what you must do. Like this, you know, the one exercise you have to do kettlebell farmer carries, right? This is the
Right.
most functional
Exactly.
exercise. And it's like, well, maybe, right? But then also, you know, if the outcome is just to be strong and build bone density and, you know, muscle tissue, there are lots of things that can do that. So no, I think that's a great approach. I was just wondering your thoughts on it overall because I know that you have done a lot of research and a lot of application for people, and ultimately, this is a thing that I've heard to be true time and time again: is the best workout routine or the best diet or the best, you know, plan is the one that you will adhere to, the one that you'll do, right?
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
there might be some optimal training plan, but if you don't stick to it, then it's not optimal at all, right? Or it's not even good because the one that you do consistently and you show up for is probably better than one that you don't show up for at all.
And to add on to what you just said a little bit is the one that you will do consistently and it's sustainable, but then also because um, part of the name of the game of the like you talked about on the infinite game, right? Part of it is just being able to stay in the game, right? So if you get an injury,
Mm,
say you're like, and this is why I know this so well is because I pushed myself so much that I acquired some injuries over the time, and so I was out of the game as I was like trying to optimize so much that I actually get hurt instead of like saying, you know what, I want to be able to play the game just consistently and learn as I go. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect, and you may not like you may be a 95% optimal situation and not 99%, but that's okay. Like it's usually not you're not gonna never be as close to the optimal as possible every time. So that's my advice is like yes, do something that's like sustainable and consistent, and it's also something that you can just stay in the game because the longer
mm,
you stay in the game, not injured and like don't feel like you have to throw up your hands and be like oh like I'm done with this.
yeah.
The more the
No, that's good, man. Yeah, I think one practical thing that I kind of found through failing at this is I didn't think hard enough before I started any plan or just said, I'm going to pick this up and add this to my routine. Is like, what is my outcome? What's my goal? And
yeah
so I encourage
exactly
listeners, if you're thinking about modifying, changing, adding, starting a fitness routine or adding in some habits, some healthy habits, do some
hmm
thinking about like, hey, like what do I want? What do I want in life? Do I want to, live until I'm 100? Okay, well, I would give you different advice, or you should follow different protocols than if your goal is to be the best bodybuilder in the world, right?
hmm
Those things aren't necessarily aligned a lot of times. So think about what you want to get out of your training regimen. What do you want in terms of performance or aesthetics or uh, just health and wellness and it's like happiness, right? These kinds of like great
exactly
outcomes, and then optimize for those things. And sometimes like when I use the word optimize, like obviously that kind of like makes you think it's got to be perfect.
right
What am I going towards? This might be just a better way to put it, right? Like just be like a little looser, you know. What do I want to get
totally
out of this? And then that will just direct your steps and what you want to add in. And I want to take this and kind of like fold in the business and entrepreneurship thing because Austin, you and I were talking about this before we got on the podcast.
hmm
Focus is also an important principle when it comes to business, right? You were
hmm
talking about your task list and prioritization. You, as the CEO, your whole job is what are we working on? What are we focused on? What are the things that we are going to do and not do? And I want to like lead with a couple quotes that like kind of sparked some insight for me. Two of
Hit
them.
me
One of
with it.
them
Love these quotes.
is James Clear. So he's the guy that wrote Atomic Habits, right? He's got great content.
Hmm. Hmm.
He posted this on LinkedIn about a week ago. Said, a simple filter for managing your time. You're not focused enough unless you're mourning some of the things you're saying no to.
Hmm.
Okay. There's
I like
also
that.
a
I like that.
great Steve Jobs quote.
Okay.
Focus is saying no to good ideas. And I think
Mm.
the kind of assumed truth there is, if you're saying no to good ideas, that means that you have found a great idea. You found
Hmm.
the exact right thing. And me personally, I struggle with this because I kind of like love optionality. I want to say yes to everything. Um, but having 20 choices actually means having zero choices, or having 20 things on your plate means actually not being able to do any one of them.
Hmm.
And I'm just wondering for you, what's that been like in the business world in terms of like battling the pull of other things trying to get your attention? Like, how do you stay focused? How do you keep the team on track? What's that look like for you?
Well, Flybodies is not $1 billion company yet, so I don't feel like I'm capable of answering this completely. No, it's definitely something where in the beginning, so like when like with your quotes, if you're, I go back to your quotes of saying like, saying no or staying focused means like saying no to something and mourning that you can't work on something else, and then also being able to say no to ideas. And to be honest, sometimes those are good. Those are piece of later stage companies. To be honest, um, it's because you honestly have an open mind in the very beginning. Because if you get too focused on one road, you're going to miss out on some other good opportunities. So it is a very tough balance. And what I'll say is, what's helped me is I use this term called like irons in the fire. And
Mm.
so this gives me the opportunity to not put all my eggs in one basket because I don't want to completely focus on one route and put all of my eggs on one basket as of right now because we're still filtering out um, what could be a really big idea for us. Definitely have some good big ideas, but in order for us to um, like they haven't been fleshed out. So focusing on like maybe four ideas is not a bad thing. You don't necessarily just need, and this is a broader term of focus. Now, Andrew, I've heard Andrew Huberman say like, hey, in order to time during the day, you can block about an hour and a half each day for maybe 2 to 3 times a day. So like on the lower level of focus, where you're like, hey, I want to get work done, you can pick one thing and say, for this hour and a half, I'm going to work on this one thing. And that's homework, that's job, that's business, that's anything that's where they've done research to show that like that's not the time that you can really focus on one thing and actually devote enough time to it and do that 2 or 3 times out of the day. And then when we broaden that scope, it's like, okay, so I'm going to pick something and I'm going to work on that for an hour and a half a day. And that thing is hopefully in those, for me, like four buckets of work where it's like, okay, we are working on step challenges for teachers. We're working on workouts and after school workouts for teachers and school members. And then we're working on one-on-one coaching and we're working summer reports, right? Something like that. And that focus is all in the same vein of we're focused on making people healthier, happier, and more productive. And we're
Mm.
focusing on like fly body stuff. I'm not saying like, oh, like this is a good idea. I need to start a whole new company, right? Um, and the more you can kind of stay focused on the core principles of what your business
Mm.
is and keep your mind open, then you can say, okay, I'm still focused on the actual problem and objective here, but I'm not closing myself off to like a great idea because
Mm.
those do come up. And I think early on, it's not super advantageous to close yourself because you want an open mind. Now when you get traction and you're like, hey, um, being and I know I'm going. This is a long monologue here. The
No,
traction.
you don't have to apologize for that. No, you're
Okay,
hitting
no.
on some good things.
Cool, cool. So when you get traction on something and you're like, man, this is something that people want or this is problems, then it's like, okay, let's hone in on that and see why that's working, right? Um, don't get too focused on one certain thing because it could be a false positive. It could be something where like, oh man, this was just like happened to be working
Yeah.
in this area.
No, that's good. I think the principle that you've hit on in both the health and wellness and then also kind of the business space is you have to try something out to see if it's going to work, right? Having that
Hmm.
idea ahead of time and just saying, I'm going to commit full send without having any evidence or proof to yourself that this is going to be good is probably it's riskier, right? There's no guarantee that it's going to pay off. And so having the ability to do
Hmm.
these small experiments, like you talk about the different veins that Fly Bodies is working in right now to see, testing out, like, is this adding value? And, how can we follow kind of like the positive feedback that we're getting from the teachers and the schools that we're working with. And then once you start to get that traction, then you really ramp it up and you're like, okay, now let's go full send on this because we have figured it out. But um,
Hmm.
I think this is highlighting for me kind of maybe like a mental blocker is that I feel like I'm like, oh gosh, I got to get the good idea now. I'm too late. I'm behind. Oh, I got to get started now, and
Yeah.
that leads to potential waste. Right? There is something to be
Hmm.
said about taking some time and pause for um, just thinking about what should be done. That kind of like the practical step of hey, what's the principle that's driving this? What's the value of this company? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And not falling in love with the solution too quickly. I can't remember where I heard this. I think that was like, I don't want to attribute, I mean, I'll just attribute it to either My First Million or Graham Weaver, right? Like, it's like, if you fall in love with the solution too quickly, you're going to get in trouble because you're going to get attached to that solution versus
Hmm.
falling in love with the problem and the people that you're really trying to help and like understanding what actually their problem is versus an idea of what you think the problem is. So no, I appreciate
Totally.
that perspective. I think it's spot on, and it reminds me a little bit of there's two interviews. One was Tim Ferriss' interview on My First Million, where they talked
Hmm.
about kind of like busy work is actually a form of laziness in a
Hmm.
way that just because you feel like you need to do activity that actually is not really adding value. So taking some time to figure out what the right thing to do is, even if it looks like wasted time, is going to save you so much time in the long run. Just based
Exactly.
on your ability to test and iterate quickly, so it can look like it just can look differently than I think people expect, like what it looks like to be productive and working towards stuff. So I appreciate you also giving them different levels of focus on that.
Hmm.
Um, are there any other practical things that you have found for you're running a company, you have irons in the fire, you're kind of just like doing it by feel and kind of like the feedback that you're getting from users. How do you run a team and prioritize what the different people on your team are working on? Like, how do you help other people that you're leading maintain focus?
Yeah, I think um, a big thing. So like, I don't think I'm an expert at it, but also like I try to use some of the principles that I've heard from podcasts and books and stuff, where it's just like you don't want to overwhelm people with too much, right? Like you want to give them specific guidance on like one or two things and let them go do that and make sure it's not, overwhelming. You don't want to give somebody to something that's too overwhelming, and you want to be like set expectations, right? So like, um, why and have a very quick feedback loop when it comes to, hey, we're going to get this done in a week. I'm not gonna we're not gonna we're not going to build out a month long plan because we need to see how this is going. Like how I keep um, the people on the team in line with what I want the company to be doing, what Flybodies needs to be doing, is basically weekly check-ins right now, and being able to see where we're at and take in information from the outside and get the feedback we're getting, and being able to say, okay, we're going in this direction. We're working on this feature. We're working on putting together this idea or piece of paper or flyer or something like that, and being very, very explicit with, all right, we're going to work on this for the next week, right? And this is it depends. It ranges with events, whereas an older, more senior person that has been around for a while, you can let you know give the reins a little. Be like, hey, I want it to look like this. I want it to be like this. Go and make this work. So that's how, like, for me, I try to keep the team focused with just simple tasks, not like this overarching, like, hey, I want you to build this thing out and get back to me a month from now. It's these short weekly check-ins, because you have to break it down to inch stones and say, okay, where are you? Are you having any trouble, or do you have any questions? Because a lot of times we don't have those touch points, and that allows us all to kind of reevaluate where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate the way that you have set expectations. It's kind of clear. Hey, this is the time block that we're going to be working on this as a team, and we're going to reevaluate. And that also helps set expectations to, hey, let's move fast on this small. You called it an inch stone, was that right? Not a milestone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
inch stone.
that's great.
Got
Just to
that. I stole that from my acquisitions. He was like, "We're doing inch stones."
no, it's
Inches.
perfect. I think that's really good because some of these other kind of like project management kind of principles seemingly are better suited for well-established processes or services or things.
Exactly.
And not that Flybodies is not established, it's that there's still a lot to be improved and worked on. And that if you said, hey, we're going to go march in this direction for 1 month, we doubled the amount of schools we had in 1 month. Okay, so that's a lot more information that we need to be listening to in order to make the best adjustments for going forward. No, that's really good.
Totally.
Any other
And
thoughts
and
on?
in our
Yeah, go.
situation, just to add to that, in our situation, we're all remote. Rising problem together. We see each other and ask questions and stuff. So that makes it a little tougher, I will say. And they Y Combinator, they have said in the past, you definitely want to all be in the same place when you do a startup. With today's technology, I think it's much easier to do it from a remote standpoint. And if you
Yeah,
have these practices in place to where you are making these touch points, it makes it very viable. So, like, that's
yeah.
one thing, is we're not all in the same. So we're not eating dinner together. We're not always talking stuff. So that makes it tougher.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge, but it's just like the reality, and I'm not willing to wait. Right now, like our live paths are going in different directions a little bit
Yeah.
geographically, and so
Right.
it'd be easy to just say, it's not viable. Let's just give up on this, or hey, it's not going to work out. Versus like, hey, let's try to make something happen. And although
Yeah.
kind of like the idea of, okay, it's not optimal. Does that mean that you should quit? No, right? Uh,
Exactly.
I think that's really yeah, that's really important to keep in mind, is that just because it's not perfect, like, don't let that stop you from doing something that you think is good.
For
Okay,
sure. For sure.
so this is kind of like an even bigger question, right? So we talked about a little bit about focus and specificity at the tactical level. Like, how do you stay focused? Time blocking, great. How do you focus on, the right thing in your life? Okay, you can do some thinking and reflecting about kind of what is right for me. I want to take it even bigger. Uh, you have your four irons in the fire, and you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one today because this is kind of most urgent. In terms of business, how do you even know that you're in the right area at all? So the frame for this is, I heard this recently, and this is not new to many people, but um, category creation, as well as like the idea of the blue ocean strategy. So there's a book written about blue ocean strategy, and kind of the synopsis is, most people are competing in red oceans, places that are just like overcrowded. You think about like health and wellness. Hey, let's create another app for people to track their health and wellness. You're like,
Hmm.
that just seems like so crowded. Like, how are we going to get attention there? And
Yeah.
what you have done, and we talked about this in the Flybody story, is you said, I'm actually going to go over here where there's nobody, seemingly like there's
Hmm.
no value, there's no customer value in teachers working out, educators. And you have
Hmm.
found an area that is like unoccupied, but like it's very important for those individuals. They're like, I'm going to help solve their problems. So I'm wondering, how has that played into kind of like your journey in fly bodies? How do you suss out whether or not you're in the right place at all versus needing to pick up everything and completely move on from an area of focus?
Dude, it's a great question because um, I think a lot of time, so like, we'll just, break it down to where like everyone needs some type of health and fitness and wellness type of care, right? Um, how did I know that I was on the right path? Well, the origin story of, okay, I helped Jordan out, and then I helped out the community, and then were wanting to be helped out as well. And we kind of tested out the workouts at schools. Like Jordan went to a couple of schools in our hometown and did and the teachers were like, "Man, we love this. We absolutely love being able to come to the gym and do a workout with the 5, and I'm done for the day." And then some of the feedback we got was, I love kids being able to see me do workouts and like say, "Oh, like that's so cool." So like when you're getting feedback like that of like people actually enjoy the service, or or it's fixing their problem, they're saying, this is really helping me out, obviously that's a good sign. And what I'll say is, that the overarching problem that we were seeing is like in the is, hey, the obesity curve is getting bigger, right? Like we're still going up, and it's like the one chart businesses, right? We talk. My first million talks about the chart businesses, and I love this because if you, I love this analogy of like smoking, right? Um, Smoking peaked in like the 1930s, 1940s, and then ever since then it started to go down, like the downwards. And um, the reason why I say that is because basically we found out that the Surgeon General was like, hey, smoking is bad for you in like the 30s and 40s. Like before that, they said it wasn't bad for you in correlation to like cancer or anything like that. But then when they found out it was, actually causing cancer and all these other things, they put it on the packet like, hey, this might cause cancer, right? And they were like, oh, whoa, okay, that's good to know. And then other things and other initiatives and probably tax and stuff like that on started driving this down. Well, the obesity curve, and so I kind of see the same analogy to smoking and then like health and wellness, right? And the obesity curve and being able to provide fitness and fitness services to schools, because right now they are not getting dedicated services to help their health and wellness, right? It is obsolete. If you want to do it, you go do it on your own. But our schedules and our time don't allow the average teacher to have to go do this stuff. So to your point, like to get back to your question of like, how do you know if something's working? Well, you want to do it on a smaller scale and do it in a reasonable, like, you want to ask your friends and family and stuff, but then you want to use other customers or like get out to other customers to say like it, right? And so the reason why I say that is because you don't want to go buy like $1 million worth of product on something that you don't know for sure if it's going to work. And so it's like you're continuously testing and getting feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I don't have like a silver bullet of when it's like, hey, this is when you have a great product, but I know as over time you start to get the feedback to say, oh man, people really like this. And when they tell you, like, I do testimonials, and they go, this is the best thing I've ever done since I've been a school teacher here for the past 20 years. That's a good indicator. Hey, you're kind of on the right track. So, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So that, I mean, I could keep going on because I have there, and just using the stories. I'll tell you one more story where one of the teachers, I was doing a testimonial with her, and she said that for there's these big steps at the school, big wooden steps that she would always have to like put one leg up and push off her leg to get up the next step. Like literally put her hands down on one of her legs and like use her arms to help push herself up to get on it. And she told me, she came up to me after one of the workouts and she was like, I have some feedback for you right now. And I was like expecting like, oh man, she's gonna be like, these workouts suck. No, she literally said, when I that story, and then she goes, now when I go up those stairs, go up the stairs with ease. And I've never been able to do that in the
Wow.
past 20 years. And I was just
Yeah.
like, dude, if that's a really cool feeling. It gave me chills.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm feeling it. That is an incredible testimonial, and it lines up perfectly with what you're talking about in terms of just a healthier, happier people is kind of what you're going for, and focusing like narrowly, laser focusing on teachers, and the problems that educators have. Right, talk about educator wellness, the faculty and staff at schools, is a great way to start and prove it. So now I'll leave with this. Let's close with this idea of Graham Weaver had a talk about the three major pillars of growth, and we've mentioned this before on the podcast, or kind of in passing. But the idea of what's your Northwest Arkansas, really small. You have to go small in order to go big, and everyone wants a bigger total addressable market, but it's kind of a
yeah,
vanity metric, right?
right, totally.
You and I, Sean, will talk about in our meetings, like, do we think that there are plenty of other industries that have the exact same problem statement? Maybe it looks a little different, but not enough time, want to prioritize it, have a lot of visibility to other people. As like an example, I'm thinking of, okay, well, medical field, right? Like really long hours, a lot of friction there for getting health and wellness. Or we talk to people that are in the airline industry, always traveling, right? And so do they have time to be able to incorporate healthy habits? The total addressable market for physical fitness and health and wellness that goes to the customer is everyone, right? The TAM is all market. But like, I asked you this question, and you gave me some of those resources to read. It seems as if we're on a better path, that like if we never got to those other markets, or never got to this massive total addressable market, never got to $1 billion company size, we would still be crushing that category that we created of educator wellness, and helping people, providing value in that
Yeah,
area, versus I'm going to answer everyone's problems, and then actually helping nobody effectively. So I guess, what is your
totally.
advice for somebody who is maybe starting on their entrepreneurial journey? They see the long-term vision and they're like, my product, my service is going to help everybody. How do they fight back the TAM vanity metric?
No, for sure. No, I love this question. And I love this topic. Everybody sees Facebook, right? And they're like, oh, everybody can use Facebook, right? Like everybody wants to. I was thinking, creating like, oh man, I want to create, Facebook for health and wellness, right? So in today's world, the the pie for certain industries is so big that you can just take a slice of that pie. And what I mean by that is like the niche groups of people, right? You can focus on a niche group of people in a certain industry and go after that niche group of people, because that, not always, but usually there's enough people in that niche group that can satisfy enough revenue to keep you afloat, right? Or allow you to live okay life. You may not make billions, like we said. Like if we literally just focus on our niche market of teachers in the health and wellness space, yes, there are a million different customers in the health and wellness space, but we are going for a specific market that's big enough to where it can make enough money for us to live a decent lifestyle. And to that point, we like I love when people say, "Oh, like somebody's already doing that." And this is what I always say. When somebody says like somebody's already doing it, I was like, "Okay, so when Adidas wanted to make shoes, did they go, "Okay, well Nike's already making shoes. We can't do that." Or, Zero shoes, right? Zero shoes, they didn't go, "Oh, well, Vivo Barefoot already makes a real good shoe." Exactly, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, just because somebody else is doing the exact, you can do the exact same thing and target a certain market and figure out exactly what they want in that product, right?
Yep.
So, and that's the beauty of today's world, is because with the internet, with social media, with all these things that you can find these thousand customers, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
thousand customers that
Thousand true
love
fans.
you,
Yep.
thousand fans. You can find those little niche markets, and you can have little the exact same market. How many kombuchas are there, right? If like, and we go back to that, it's just like you and it's tough. I'm not saying it's tough because in the beginning, I didn't say like, you know what, I'm going to focus on teachers because I know that's the answer, right? I didn't say that in
Yeah.
the beginning. In the beginning, I was just like solving the problem of people wanting to be healthier.
Yeah.
So then it evolved into something else. Like, it honestly started out as like stay at home moms.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing.
Well, and to that point, that like I said, like they're similar personas, similar ideal customers, right? Stay at home
Mm-hmm.
moms have the same kind of like different in terms of demands on time, but like all the same friction in terms of getting it done. So like showing up to
Exactly.
them, it is a way to kind of like solve that problem or address that pain point. So yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is you may feel the pressure to grow or big, or just like if somebody asks you what you're working on and you said, "Oh, I'm working with, private school teachers and staff and
Mm-hmm.
hoping to help them out." That just seems so small, but it's like,
Yeah,
hey,
that's right.
just get rid, or try to like process through the ego thing and focus on providing the value where it's at. And you'd be so surprised at like just kind of like we've seen this in all these other industries where people will carve off a section of the market. It's like that's not profitable, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's so much value there, and now just money is flooding
Mm-hmm.
in because they stuck around long enough to solve the problem and build a profitable company. So yeah, I see
Exactly.
fly bodies, as many more things than just educator wellness. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, I have been satisfied in terms of I'm not in a rush to leave educator wellness space. Right? There's so much more growth and opportunity here for us at fly bodies.
Yeah, and the focus and specificity goes back to that. What we're trying to do is just like you, me, Sean, anybody in the, like everybody, like we all that you say like you have to just stay in the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see that there's enough people in that area, you're like, okay, there's not millions or billions of people in this area of like what we're trying to solve, but there's enough to where we can make it a viable business.
Yeah.
So to your point, man, like I love that you're saying that. Like, stay in the problem, stay focused on trying to um, fix, solve their problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, hey, thanks for staying locked in on one topic today. Kind of apt for our focus on focus. I appreciate the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, man. Let's cut there.